Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Com Report wherever you get a podcast. Watch it on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. So just a couple programming notes. I will be continuing to do the practice updates for the rest of this week because we are allowed to watch practice each day this week. So today, obviously on Thursday, and then on Friday as well. Then after the game, I'll have one for Monday morning because it's an 8 o'clock game on Sunday. Then we get into a different week. So it won't be quite every day because there's not a practice report every day. So anyway, just to clear that up for now. But let's get to today because that's what we're here for. So Dan Quinn, I'm going to start with Dan Quinn and what he talked about before practice. A couple of things that stood out a little bit on Johnny Newton. He said it's not the foot that's bothersome right now. It's the soft tissue injury. So they want to try and ramp him up in terms of what he's doing off to the side by the end of the week and maybe get him involved into practice next week. I don't know to what extent. I think there's still some optimism that he'll be ready before the start of the season. The problem is he's missed almost all of camp. And so it's really hard to go in and make an impact. Even if you're back for that time, it's hard to go in and play to the level you need to if you're just coming back at it because he missed all of spring. He's missed most of the summer. It's asking a lot for him to go in there and play anything, do anything of substance because it's too hard as a rookie. So he may be back, but it's still going to be a little while before we see what this guy can do because just haven't seen anything yet. So that's one thing. And then Brandon Coleman, just as an injury thing, did go through some individual drills or did go through individual work. And then once it was full team work, all working off to the side. So he was back in his uniform and all that, but just not a whole lot there. So I think by the end of this week, the plan is for them, they're hoping that he can be more full by the end of the week. Another guy, like the difference here is that he's at least gone through the spring and then the early part of the training camp, first couple of weeks of training camp. Still a lot of time to miss for a guy that they were hoping would start at left tackle. The helpful thing here is that while Cornelius Lucas is not a long-term answer at this position, he has certainly shown he's capable of being a short-term solution and can get them through a few weeks before it just to see what Coleman can do. But the hard part for Coleman, we don't know what he can do against another team because we haven't seen it. So seen him in practice, has looked pretty good, but we don't know what he can do when facing pass rush from their teams. There's so much more to learn. And that's why I think it's could take a minute, but they're lucky in that Cornelius Lucas is on the roster because he can at least get you through until they feel Coleman is ready. And then we still don't know what will Coleman look like when he actually does get in there. The other couple things that also Quinn talked about, Tyler Owens, he said it was cool to see him absolutely empty the tank Saturday night. Kid's been doing that all camp. So I'd be really surprised if he doesn't make this roster at this point. That leads into this one where Quinn said that the two position groups that have stood out to him so far in terms of quality of depth and all that and the competition, tight end and safety. And I think one of the reasons safety is interesting because if you've noticed, Dominique Hampton is now working a lot more at linebacker starting late last week. I think that's because of the emergence of Owens. I don't think they want to cut Owens. So you're going to probably keep him there. And then one way to help Hampton make the team is maybe by working him a little bit more at linebacker. He can play both, but I think that's more his avenue to get on here because I'll be honest, I don't know that if they're only keeping, let's say they only keep 5 safeties. I don't think Hampton earned a spot on that. If he made it, it would have been, he's a draft pick. I don't know that he earned that, but I think at linebacker gives you something different that maybe you can develop. And also more so from special teams. Is he a guy, he's a bigger guy who can run, he can help you in that area. So I would look at it more like that and then develop because they do have, the Jordan McGee is hurt right now, but also Michael Walker, who's done a nice job as a backup. So anyways, and then they have, guys like Jeremy Chin, Tyler Owens, they can play those roles in this defense. Like that's the big safety role, the Buffalo nickel, as we heard the last few years. So, and then tight end, interesting there again, because Cole Turner has gotten a lot of run as the 4th tight end, but I know that they like Colson Yankoff. So we'll see what happens there. Do they keep 3 and then put Yankoff on the practice squad? Maybe that's a reason why he's not getting a ton of action at tight end in some of these games. Or do they keep 4 and still put Yankoff on there or put him on? I think it's something that's going to be interesting to watch next week when the final cuts are made. Obviously, Ertz, Bates, and then Ben Sinnott are the locks. The other thing that Quinn talked about, he's talked about this before. One of the things he said, and this is something I kind of like that he does, because he said there was one of the receivers was working on his footwork as the wind blows through here, was working on his footwork, and then noticed and in a drill before the game, at some point before the game, and then in the game you see him execute that at the top of the route. And those are the kind of things that Quinn likes to emphasize to the team in film sessions, and he did so here. So I like that he does that. He's done that other times. I just think it's a good thing to point out, hey, this is what you're working on, and this is the result of that. Like you did it here, and it showed up here. That's what you want, to connect that situation. And then the other thing he was talking about, the value of how special teams plays a role in these final roster spot decisions. And during his answer, he referred to Jeremy Reeves as, quote, a first level player in that area. So hard to imagine you get rid of a first level player, but and I don't, because I just think safety is going to be really interesting if they only keep 5. Maybe they keep 6. So there are probably 6 who warrant a spot, and I would include Derek Forrest, Percy Butler in there, along with Quan Martin, Jeremy Chin, and obviously Jeremy Reeves. So, and then Tyler Owen. So you could make a case for 6, but if they only keep 5, then it gets really tough. You're going to lose somebody that you don't want to. All right, let's get to the practice field. So for the first offense, wasn't a very good first series in 11-on-11, where Jaden Daniels was a little bit off. The first pass batted by looked like John Allen. Second one, Bobby Wagner almost picks it off. Now in the third throw, you saw the value of what Daniels can do. And again, it's a subtle thing, but it's a helpful thing. So looking to the left, goes through his reads, just checks it down in the middle to Austin Eckler, but with enough time for Eckler to turn. And because you're throwing it on time, Eckler has time to turn and get upfield because there's really nobody around him. But there were a couple of times where the things were just a little bit off. There was one time to Zach Ertz, a little bit too far inside. You wondered, was he expecting Ertz maybe to continue the route, or did he's trying to throw it away from the defender? It was Forbes was in his zone. There was a zone. I think it was Forbes. I think Louvu was on the inside too. So he's trying to throw a little bit away from Forbes, a little bit to the inside, just a little bit off. And then, he did have, again, so to point out the one to Eckler, and I'll get into a little bit more of what he showed in a minute, but that was just the first series. So there you go. I know Terry McLaurin, there was somebody who put out a tweet talking about how stationary he's been throughout the preseason, about where he's lining up, mostly almost 28 or 29 snaps on the outside. Keep in mind, they're not going to show all that they're going to do with McLaurin. And the one thing I do know, because McLaurin has said it, he's working a lot. And I think you heard I played, some of the interview on here. He's playing more in the slot. So, and there have been times where that's been the case. So I do think when the season starts, I don't think it's going to be a stationary thing. So based on what we've seen and based on what we've been told publicly. So I would not worry about how stationary it is, et cetera. So, and I think the person compared it to Larry Fitzgerald when he was in Arizona with Kingsbury and DeAndre Hopkins, and how they compared. But I do think they're going to try and move McLaurin around a lot more. And part of that is, I think it just helps McLaurin. I mean, which helps his offense. And I think when you have some of the pieces they have, you're going to have to be a little bit more creative, because I don't think outside of Terry, you still have to see some more from the receiver group in general. And so that's why I think it's smart to do that. So there you go. But anyways, I wouldn't worry about if he's too stationary. It's preseason. They're not going to show a whole lot. So there you go. Oh, by the way, I'm going to get back into Jaden in 1 minute, but I would point out Jeff Driscoll was the only other quarterback to really work today, because Hartman's still banged up, and then Mariota still wasn't out there during 11. So it was just Daniels and Driscoll, and Trace McSorley is still. I mean, he's going to be right now he'd be their 5th guy, right? And you're not going to keep 5, but with Hartman still not able to go and Mariota not going, it was just Daniels and Driscoll in this. It was approximately a 90-minute practice. So. For the entire month of August, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is offering multiple ways to save on climbing and zip lining, and 50% off axe throwing. There are only a few Sundays left without football, so it's time to get that last summer adventure on the schedule. There's no better place to spend the last few days and nights of the summer with friends and family. Don't just take our word for it. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring was named the #1 aerial adventure park in North America by USA Today. Anytime you're thinking about reaching new heights, make sure you know before you go. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is the only ACCT accredited park in Maryland or Virginia. So there you have it, folks. For the rest of the summer, you can get the best climbing, zip lining, and axe throwing in the country, up to 50% off right here in the DMV. Reserve your adventure today at www.theadventurepark.com/kind. The other thing is with Daniels. Let's get back to him because he's still. It's funny because it's funny to listen to players talk about him because it's just a different tone. And I've been through this before and I've seen it. You've seen young guys come in. With Robert, there was a different tone too because they knew what he could do. But I think there's an even different one with Daniels because it's not only what they see him doing out on the field, it's what they see him doing behind the scenes. And I've harped on that a ton because I think that's the #1 reason for, and if you want to have optimism about Daniels, it starts there. Because if you don't see that there, eventually the stuff here isn't going to matter. It's not going to translate. Right. And so if something happens to his legs, then you're done. But that's not the case with Daniels because of the work he puts in over here, and that's what the players see, and that's what they talk about. But then you have talked to guys coming off the field, and they talk about his poise in the pocket. And just the other night, they were kind of marveling at how quickly he was getting rid of the ball. Now that some of it's by design, but it's also there's sometimes you're reading a blitz and you're getting rid of it. Boom now. And there was a play today where it's kind of like that, where Sanders still blitzes from the slot. And there's no hesitation. He sees it. He turns, gets right. He throws it to the hot side. And I think it was to Zacchaeus, just turns it up. And then the receiver blocks Emmanuel Forbes, who was covering Zacchaeus. But just a nice job by Daniels, good recognition, ball out quick. That's what he does. So that's a good one. Then the other thing that's clear, has been clear since training camp started, he has a nice connection with Zach Ertz over the middle. So I think they really need Ertz to be a big factor the entire year because I think if he is, I think that he's going to be a really good option for Jaden Daniels. You saw it today. There was one off a play action pass, but a couple times down the middle, that's where he likes to hit. And it's funny because the whole narrative with him at LSU, he doesn't throw over the middle because you had guys on the outside who were going to score touchdowns. That's why. Like, what are you going to do? Throw over the middle, or are you going to throw down the field where you can get it to them and they can score touchdowns? The whole point of it is score touchdowns. NFL, the point of it is to score touchdowns. The point of it is to possess the ball, and you've got to use the entire field. And he's been using the middle quite a bit during training camp. Had a nice play action wheel route to John Bates of all people. So that was a good one. And I told you I liked the Zacchaeus play, but Zacchaeus also had a really good block on Emmanuel Forbes on a run play. Just got on him, didn't let him get off. Now I know it's, is that the world's, he's not a big guy. We know that, but it was still a nice job by Zacchaeus. And then there was another time with Zacchaeus, he's going up against Sanders still covering him on the outside and comes down, just turns him around just with a little stem to the inside, cuts back to the outside. And Sanders still gets turned a little bit, but he doesn't, to his credit, he doesn't take this wide circle to return. It's like he turns, but it's almost like in a straight line. So the coverage is still pretty good. I actually give Sanders still a lot of credit on that, but the ball is right there. So Zacchaeus wins the route. Sanders still could have made it look a lot worse, but it was a completion because the ball was there. He turns around, there's the ball, and that was from Jaden Daniels. And I think I told you, or maybe I didn't, Luke McCaffrey had one good block in the run game as well. So that's something, as a receiver, you need to do more. But if you can do that plus the other stuff, that absolutely helps. And I brought up Forbes. He was aggressive against the run a couple of times. Driscoll did hit De'Ami Brown in a deep ball against, actually, I think it was Castro Fields that he got. So Castro Fields gave up a long one. And so there you go. But Forbes was aggressive against the run. That's good to see. But again, the job is to cover. And can he do that consistently? We're going to find out. Let's see what else we got here. Kaz Allen. they clearly see something in him here and clearly are trying to see if he warrants a roster spot. Right now, you're doing that with all 90, of course, but they're definitely giving him some different looks. And they're giving, we saw it in the game, lining up in the backfield. Well, they're continuing to do that here, and they're doing it against him with starters. So I'm going to be curious to see what happens with him. That fumble was not good the other night. The troubling part to me was he did cover it with both hands, and it was still stripped. But they see something in him that they're trying to tap into, and that quickness. He does have good speed. They don't have a lot of guys that you could consider like a possible playmaker, but he's one of them. And so, I think that's something to watch for sure. Oh, and by the way, it was Forbes did get beat by Brown. Castro Fields got beat by Byron Pringle by a few yards. So and it was just a good ball from Driscoll as well. But anyway, just to clear that up. So then the other part, I think I told you that I saw a matchup with Samerstill in the slot against McLaurin. I told you McLaurin has been working some of their in the slot against Samerstill, runs a little kind of a wheel route. Ball could have gone there easily. Samerstill was with him, but I think I'm going to give Terry McLaurin a shot on that. Ball went elsewhere on that play. So anyway, a couple other news and notes and nuggets. Ricky Stromberg worked at left guard, center, and right guard. So they're clearly trying to see what can he do. That's a big decision to make there. Third round pick a year ago, had the injury, and I can't say that he's been standing out. I thought last year you saw a little bit more, but that injury was kind of a bad one. Riley Patterson, place kicker, only guy in camp right now, 5 for 6, missed one from 53 or 53, 54, hits one from 58. I still think that the next kicker, they're going to, if you're them, like, how do you not look at another guy, another roster? I don't know that one game is going to be enough to change their minds based on he's been inconsistent throughout camp. Now, again, Thursday in Miami, that's fine. The game 2 for 4. So that's what you're going to go on. Martavis Bryant, minimal action today, got in there with some reps, didn't do a whole lot. And then, then it's funny, like Zacchaeus also, they're working on punt returns as they do every time. But I'll be curious to see what happens there because Jamison Crowder has not gotten any work there. Well, they know what he can do. They have to see what others can do. Zacchaeus would be an interesting guy there. They work Jahan Dotson there. This is now the third year in a row that he's worked on punt returns. We haven't seen him out there yet, but they know what Crowder can do. And so Zacchaeus has to show that if he wants to be that guy, he can do that, catch it consistently and securely. And there was one time today where he's kind of backing up and he catches it instead of catching it like almost like a basket, right? He reaches his hands are above his head and catches it that way. Not the ideal way to catch it. And his other against the Jets had a couple times where I felt like it wasn't as smooth as you want. The returns were good, but the catch needs to be a little bit more smooth, I guess. And that's where Crowder offers it. When you watch him do it, he's smooth with it. So, I do think they can both have a spot on this roster. I think a guy like Pringle can too, because he's a guy that he can return kickoffs. So, and the last thing is sometimes after practice, first of all, by the way, that new field is now it's done, right? The turf field is done. They have a grass field in there. It's done. But after practice, guys stick around to do things. And I'm watching like Castro Fields and Mike Davis. Mike Davis was talking to Castro Fields a lot. They're just kind of by the goalpost. And there's at the base of the goalpost, they're going, or you can see Davis talking to him about some hand placement, footwork, whatever. So then after that, they kind of spend a few minutes just working on their footwork and then jamming with their left hand or jamming with their right hand. Because a lot of times you're not putting both hands on the guy all the time. You're putting one hand on him to kind of try and shift where you want him to go and to help your leverage. So they were working a lot on that. So just little things that you see, then how does that play out in games? Because I think obviously Castro Fields has a good shot to make this roster, especially if they keep 6 corners. So we'll see what happens there.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, The John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts, and many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
That's my practice report from today. Appreciate you tuning in. I'll be back on Thursday with another practice report. So I'll talk to you next time.